amounts to nothing in the end. Oh, no, I won't worry my life away, and I'll be old and not to be alive. I won't worry my life away.
Well, thanks for coming to the school and performing, and we just want to talk to you about your career thus far and future plans and things like that.
Great.
We know that you moved to San Diego after studying at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York. So what made you actually pick up and just move there from the academy?
I had, well, you know, I moved to New York when I was 18 to study musical theater because it was my ticket to New York, you know, and I just wanted to get up there and I wanted to have a life in the creative arts somehow, you know, and entertaining, you know, and that was really, basically I didn't get accepted to any other college except that one, you know, so, but it was great and immediately just planted all these seeds in my head and got a taste of the real competitive nature of the creative world and decided to withdraw from it, move back to Virginia and really focus on sort of specifics, you know, and what I wanted to do. And that at the time was I wanted to write my own musical. I wanted to write my own songs and tell my own stories, you know, and because the life experience and then sort of recreating this or tapping into things and magically manifesting these tunes was unlike anything I'd ever experienced, you know. So then basically, after 3 years in Virginia working on that, I decided I would go back to school because I was tired of the day jobs, and I thought, okay, I'll enroll in the local university. I don't know what I'll major in, but I'll live there for a while, I'll figure it out. I'll get involved with the program. I'll be able to eat on campus. I'll be able to sleep on campus, learn on campus. I won't even need my car, you know. I was really into that. I was tired of having the full-time job, and I thought, you know, I'll be able to take classes in music. I'll really excel, and so I was stoked. I got all the loans myself. I stoked my parents out, and then just before school started, I decided I would reward myself with a trip to California because I'd never seen the West Coast, which was both a good and a bad idea. Right. You know, bad because I just fell in love with it. You know, by the time I got back to Farmville, Virginia, after my trip, I couldn't bear being anywhere else other than California. So I was there, you know, a half a semester. By the time spring break rolled in, I realized I was going to go back to California for good. And San Diego, it just was a fluke. You know, California was really it was just the topography of the land, the adventure getting out there, the atmosphere, the people, the culture. You know, everything was blowing my mind and was inspiring me. And I thought, if anything, I'm going to write great stories by this. You know, and I didn't really have a plan. But I met a lot of great people in San Diego, and the acoustic music scene was really thriving in 99, 2000, and I just stayed, yeah.
And of course that ultimately led to your record deal.
It did.
And I'll never forget the first time I heard Remedy on the radio. I was like, this is different, this is new, it's fresh.
Right. Yeah.
So what made you actually write that song? Was it a personal experience? And did you know that would be your first big single?
It was. I didn't know. You know, there's all kinds of weirdness that went into making that song, because I had originally written it for my best friend in the world, in fact, from Virginia. And at that time, this was about, I don't know, probably 2001, at that time he was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, kind of a bone cancer, and I was like, man, this guy's 22 years old, 21 years old, and he's got no hair on him, you know, he's like near death. I just couldn't figure out why I was living in San Diego, writing a record for a major record label, and my best friend in the world is in the hospital, you know. It's like, we grew up drinking the same water, you know, how does it all balance? And my best friend was just super strong through it all. He's like, dude, this is just an experience, I'm gonna get through it, blah, blah, blah. And that like inspired all of us, you know, to just keep doing whatever we're doing, you know, endure, and just keep living your life. And so the song sort of came out through that. And then as I was working on the record, you know, I kept fooling with it and I actually had used those lyrics to the music of Curbside Prophet. And I was sort of working that around, and took the song into several different songwriting sessions to say, like, you know, I don't really know where this is at and what's going on, and, you know, a little nip tuck here, there, and before you know it, you've got this kind of, this song, you know. And at the time I was a coffee shop songwriter, and I had never written or made anything like that, you know. It sort of just happened, and it scared me. You know, I didn't know. I was like, how can I do this? How can I pull this off? How can I go back into a coffee shop and play this sound, you know, when I'm just this sound? But I learned, you know, I learned how to do it because seeing the reaction on people's faces and how they were reacting to the message in the song, you know, it definitely it changed my view of why things are made and how things are made and who's responsible for making them, you know. It became more of a shared thing, you know. Music is meant to be shared by the listener, by the musicians, by all of it. So it was a pretty profound impact.
Great, and from what I know, one of the many things about you that fans love is that your music has meaning. And I
hope so.
And I think Wordplay is another song that has a meaning personally for you. Could you maybe explain a little bit about that and how it plays into the interesting music video that it has?
I think Wordplay came out of a more of a frustrated period in my life. You know, it had such an amazing run with the first album, something I did not expect, you know, and made a first record pretty fast, pretty cheap. And for it to have as much success as it did, and then to come right off the road and start working on the next record, well, my life experience had been sort of contorted a little bit, you know, like what once was this guy in a pickup truck driving to California was now a guy in a tour bus touring around the world, you know, and I didn't know where my real roots were, you know. When I got out of a tour bus, I couldn't feel my roots being planted in the ground at all. So, you know, a lot of those songs on Mr. A to Z were about travel and trying to figure out who I am and what is this about. But in that search, in that being introverted, you know, I was able to kind of find all these different facets about myself. And the song Wordplay is sort of about my struggle in the battles that you tend to have with the business. And I didn't want to make it all about the struggle. You know, I wanted about how do I have fun with the struggle? How do I make my job fun? Because now it has become a job, you know. And so it was all about just how I sort of break apart the words and the ingredients and whatnot. It was definitely a fun song to write, but I think you know, it's harder to translate a song, you know, to put it out in the world and say, check out this song that, well, really only a small percent of people can relate to, because, you know, we're under the lights and we're doing the thing. It's harder for people to embrace that, you know. Whereas Remedy, I was able to go into hospitals because people laying in the hospital were even getting it, you know, which I thought was quite a cool thing. So, but the cool thing about spending time being introverted is you have to go in before you can come out. So ever since that album, the songs have become more expressive, even more so, I think, than the Remedy. So hopefully the next album, whereas Mr. A to Z, the album we just made, was about me. It was all me, me, me. The next album is about we.
There you go. And Wordplay does have some references to the industry as a whole. And how are you dealing with the whole, you know, one-hit wonder kind of thing? Are you kind of, I mean, now you have 2 hits, 3 hits, so, I mean, you're doing well.
Yeah, I got over it, yeah.
Like, you mentioned a few of those things in the song, so how do you think artists deal with that, and how did you personally deal with that whole deal?
I think time allows you to deal with that. You know, like, at the time I wrote Wordplay, I was under a deadline, you know, so I didn't know how to deal. I didn't have time to deal with it. So for me, the way to deal with it was to kind of combat it with song, with words, and since then, the more time you have to live with it and continue to write, and realize that, you know, every song you write isn't the end all be all. Every album you make isn't your last album, and so time just gives you a totally different perspective on things. And also at the end of touring Mr. A to Z, you know, I finally just gave I didn't want to get off the road again and have to write another record. I gave myself, you know, it's been 8 months now that I've had off, you know, and in that time I built my own little space to write and record. Right. So there's no more having to tiptoe around other people's studios and rent studios. You know, we have our own little creative world to emote And that's how we songs are created, you know. It's like a little temple where we can go and say thank you. And being home for 8 months, now I know, you know, now I know where my roots are again. You know, now I know when I go to a grocery store, the things I like to buy. You know, you don't get that luxury sometimes when you're on tour. People think tour is a glamorous thing, but it's often just parking lots and bus fumes.
And you have jazz influences, hip-hop influences, pop influences in all of your songs. I think the hip-hop one gets a lot of attention.
Okay.
What do you attribute the influence for that to?
Oh, I'm easily influenced. I mean, anything I listen to, I get excited about. I say, oh, I want to do that. And that's really what it's all about. And the thing I've always liked about hip-hop music is that it's the wordsmiths that are behind those songs, because the tracks themselves are usually just a sample, a loop, some kind of beat, but it's the cadence of the vocals and it's the message in the vocals that really carry it and kind of take you up, take you down, get into your head. And there's often so much stuff in it, it takes 20 listens before you even figure out what's going on. And I love that as a writer and as a listener. And so when I get excited about that, I want to do that. I want to know what it feels like to be on the other side of that mic or channeling that, where your mouth is just going and you've got these rhythms coming out of you. And because I was always a vocalist first before I picked up any instrument and tried anything.
Right.
So rap music, and jazz music, the Scats, Ella Fitzgerald, Mel Torme, I mean, anything that's in the vocal category, I just want to get involved in. So I always admired the rap dudes.
And if you get any criticism from anybody about, always trying to rap, I mean, I know you're different because you play instruments and you have a different kind of image, but do you ever get criticism like that, and how do you respond?
I really haven't been paying much attention in a while to the criticism, because that'll just break your flow right away. I mean, you can read 100 great things in a row, like, oh my gosh, he does this, he does that, but all you have to do is read one thing where he's like, oh, he shouldn't keep doing this, and it'll kill you, you know what I mean?
Right.
And so I just decided I'm not going to read any of that stuff, because the only thing that can make you feel inferior is yourself.
That's a perfect way to end the interview. I want to thank you again for coming on the show and talking to us, and for taking some time after working on your third album to stop by.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
And make sure you tune in next week. Thanks for watching.
Still I've got cobblestone joints and plate glass points as I'm all by myself tonight. Not again, not again. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, yeah. And don't it feel alright? And don't it feel so nice? Lovely, lovely, lovely. Say, and if you should nervously break down when it's time for the shakedown, will you take it? It's when you cry just a little, but you laugh in the middle.